Bracey, thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me.
One of the things that I appreciated about what I learned from you is what you're trying to do with virtual reality in terms of making the workplace safer, more inclusive, and as a whole, if that changes lives, that's going to have a societal impact. Can you discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, so so I work at Praxis Labs. I'm the senior experience designer, and I was fortunate to get started there in February, and uh, they were already really well along on the way of aiming towards DEI training for companies, for businesses. And essentially, the idea is if we can affect the culture of these massive companies that are affecting the lives of so many people, that the trickle down effect from there is we would affect the people at the top and the people who are the decision makers and people who are affecting the culture. And ultimately, we could change a culture in a way that would like rapidly scale faster than we would if we were trying to just do it on an individual basis. And the whole idea behind that is using VR to put people in a first perspective position of somebody else's, put you in somebody else's shoes, essentially. And the research is showing that VR is just really, really good at doing that and giving you just a better understanding of someone else's lived experience, starting the communication or starting the conversation there.
How did you get to this point in your career to make this kind of decision for yourself as far as where you want to take things?
It's a I feel like for everyone in the XR industry, it wasn't a straight line. Like there is no straight line. In fact, I don't think there will be a straight line to XR until we hit like 2040, where somebody like, oh yeah, I had VR in the house, and then I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I started out well, coming out of high school, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. I went to what we call 13th grade, and happened to find a film class, and I was like, this is amazing. And so that sent me down this path of going into cinema. And I thought I was going for a direction of like just cinema, like film production, but it was actually cinema. The university that I went to, Binghamton, was really more focused on the art side of filmmaking, and more of like, think of film like a canvas and not like it has to be done a very specific way. And I feel like that gave me this really interesting foundation of looking at a lot of things that way. Like when I got out of school, the group of friends and the people that I wanted to work with tended to lean towards more like, well, we don't have a lot of money, but what do we have? Like, we've got each other, we've got these cheap cameras, like, what can we make with this stuff, what we've got? And we started to build up there. And then I really got this perspective of it's what you put on camera that matters. It's not about the money or what's behind the scene, it's what you show. And that led me down this path of really taking apart experiences, no matter what it is, whether it's a cinematic experience, whether it's a painting, whether it's music. And I got involved in all forms of expression. And I found that as soon as 2014 hit, news of Oculus being bought out by Facebook and everything, and my interest started to lean towards that, I became kind of obsessed with, well, what is what experience are we going to start shaping? What experience? How are we going to put people in these virtual worlds, these virtual experiences? Because to their brain, at some point, it's not virtual. To their brain, at some point, it's just experience, and that means that we're responsible for a lot more than we have been previously. Like previously, there's always been some frame, whether that's a frame of a television or an actual frame for a painting, or headphones, or it's just like just audio and you're taking other input. But for the first time, now we're getting to this place where we're responsible for everything. We're responsible for the dirt on the ground. We're responsible for that annoying sound in the back that somebody's like kicking your chair or something like that in theater. Like we're responsible for it all. And so then I started to really pull on like what are the elements that build experiences from what I learned from cinema and what I learned from just pulling myself up from my bootstraps with my friends and making content. It's like, how do we take the theme of what we're trying to say and use that to direct what we want the experience to be. And so like, yeah, it's kind of a long journey. Hopefully I shortened it for most people, but that's roughly what got me to where I'm at, where I'm just excited about experience and expression, whether that's like an expression of a theme and like really like getting to the heart of what you're trying to express, whether that's an individual or an organization. What are we trying to express? Find the best themes that can express that, and place those themes across all areas of the experience that we can.
And what's your emotional connection?
Um,
Meaning, like, what are you putting into your work?
yeah, I think that's a good question. For me, a couple of things. I feel like ultimately I'm trying to achieve a better potential. I know that ultimately my potential is limited by the potential of everybody else around me. Like if everyone around me, everyone who's creating my environment isn't achieving what would make them feel fulfilled, then ultimately my fulfillment is capped. So if I can make the world a better place by making everybody else's life around me a little bit more fulfilled, it's actually quite selfish. Ultimately, my life is just going to be better. Like it, so I found that this future technology that we're leaning into, whether we want to or not, is going to be better at achieving, like helping us achieve elements of our life, in helping us achieve better mindsets, helping us achieve better habits. But it'll also be helping us achieve things that we don't necessarily want to do. And ultimately, it requires nudging in a direction that is more beneficial than it is destructive. And so I'm trying to be a force of helping nudge people in a more beneficial. And for me, beneficial is awareness. It's an awareness of our environment. It's awareness of each other's perspectives. It's an awareness of the traumas that we're overcoming individually, and that communities might be overcoming, and ultimately get rid of the blame game and get more into like, hey, let's do something about this. And this can be a big effort or it can be a small effort, but ultimately it requires effort. And the more effort we put in collectively, the more we're gonna get out of it. So that's, in a rough nutshell, that's essentially helping us achieve our potential is really what's driving me more than anything.
And you do sound driven. The concept of just using what you have to pull yourself up, figure it out, and then once you've, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you take care of those basics, you're safe, you're secure, there's food, you build relationships, you build community. That's really cool. What was that jump from film to VR? What was that process?
Like most things, it's like kind of like it's like a spectrum of change. It's like it's not necessarily as a blend. It didn't start like, it wasn't like a direct line, but that process started when I was interested in getting into VR. For me, the natural place was, well, I guess I'm going to make VR videos, like 360 films, because that's what being on stage with Paul McCartney playing, like, I was like, this is amazing. This is the future. And then really, I think the piece Strangers, where it was just this guy who was playing his keyboard next to his computer with his dog on the couch, and it was just a camera in his loft, seeing that I just felt, I felt something very similar to just hanging out with some friends, where I was just chilling at their place while they were just like messing around and playing something, and there was no agenda. It was just existing. And that feeling really pulled me. It's like, oh, this is really powerful. There's a lot of potential here. But when it came to the practice of creating VR or 360 videos, I found that the novelty wore off real fast. So I very quickly, once I started to get into the industry a little bit more, started to get some equipment, started to film some stuff, and started to watch more, I found I wasn't really interested in 360 video, but I was really interested in interactive. And around that same time, I happened to know this gallery owner in Soho, and I there's so much history in that gallery, and a lot of art shows that I could have never gone to just because I just don't have the time for all the gallery openings. And I was like, oh, it would be great if I could just come off the street and throw on a headset and go through just the virtual archives of the gallery showings. And I can walk around the gallery, since it's not high in interactivity, but experientially, I would be getting essentially the same thing. I'd be able to have a moment in front of a piece of art and experience it. When I started to break that out, and it's like, well, what would that require practically? Somebody coming off the street. Well, what if it wasn't just me? What if it was this older man who has back problems and is carrying a lot of bags, and it's in the middle of the winter? Like, how would he come in and put on a headset and be able to have the same experience? Because that guy right now, he's being served. He could still walk in the gallery and walk around and walk out and have had those moments with the paintings, but how would he be able to access the archives? And so then I was like, oh, well, we don't have a means of simply moving around a space in VR, and we don't have a means of just like putting on the headset comfortably and cleanly, and a real the repetition of going through that. So that started to pull me away from the, oh, let's just make VR video, and really start to get into like, what is the experience, like practically, what are the decisions that we have to make that is going to create the holistic experience? Because an experience isn't just like a start to finish play and then that's it, like we walk away with experience. It's the whole shebang. And when I was saying like we're responsible for everything, I mean even more than just putting on the headset. We're responsible when we're creating these experiences. We're also responsible for like putting on the equipment, and is the like if that headset's not feeling good, that's going to prime your brain in a way that it's going to negatively receive all this stuff that we've been working on, and we don't want them to experience it through a negative lens. So so that began the journey of me leaving cinema and film, and moved me towards like experiential design. Part of the way there was like I started creating some hardware. I created this foot pedal to move people around easier, all this stuff. Like I just went in every direction until I was just like, all right, it's time to pull it back. Let's focus on just the experience inside the headset for now.
How do you think about when you're mapping out the experience? How do you think through that process to put something together?
Yeah, I think it always starts with, what is the theme that you're trying to express? Like what is the heart of the communication that you are trying to express to other people? And once I get a clear understanding of what that theme is, then I want to make direct lines to that theme, to what are the touch points of your experience. When you come into the space, how do we help prime you for the themes that we want you to take away? When you take off this headset, what do we want you to walk away with? It's not going to be the mechanics. It's not going to be how beautiful everything was, because that's going to change depending on the hardware. Like, what are we actually trying to communicate? And then it's like, well, what do we have realistically? Like what kind of budget, whether that's financial or time or whatever. It's like, what can we use to achieve? And then that's setting up the higher priorities. Like what's the biggest bang for a buck? If we make a space that really has most of the themes embedded into it's every nook and cranny, that might really help us with the rest of the work. It might help us prime your brain in a way that you're more willing to accept subconsciously what we're trying to connect or communicate, to the point that we've got you in the right mindset, so then you can kind of digest a lot of the things that we're putting up there for you to consume. And
What
then
you're saying has me thinking about, it ties to two things. One is a flat customer journey when B2B marketers are thinking about content and what that process looks like to pull someone in, and what those touch points are. What are the constraints? What is
yeah,
the design? How do you prime the brain? And in the video game industry, put somebody into a world and you want them to get from, say, A to R, but you want it to have multiple paths so they have at least a feeling of freedom of choice.
yeah,
But you put those little triggers that get them to that certain point, ultimately that you need them to go.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
you're doing it in a virtual world.
I feel like when you're talking about the marketing side, the marketing journey, I feel like Disney. No one beats Disney in that. Like they know every touch point, and they want each and every touch point with their company to be just like, it's like just like glittery,
Magical. Yeah.
magical. Yeah, exactly. They know. I mean, we had recently set up to go to Disney World for the first time in my adult life, and they have these magic band, like the bands for you and everything that you get. And as soon the box has no markings, but as soon as you open it, it's just like, welcome to magic. Like, it's already setting that tone of like, you put on this band and you don't have to have anything. You don't have to have your phone, you don't have to have your wallet, you don't have anything. You just magically disappear into the world of Disney.
What were some of your favorite parts?
Oh, I haven't gone yet.
Oh, it's still playing.
We're still going to be, but yeah, I will be doing my research. I will be there. Like, all right, so they set up the experience like this. They primed you for this, and this is the payoff. And
That's cool that you're just even the beginning of your journey into their world has already made an impression that deep. It's,
yeah,
I love Disney. I think it's great. And so I'm super excited. We're going to need to have a second episode together just to talk about what you're experiencing that
sounds
impact
great.
for you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, no, I'm excited, and I'm supposed to be going with my wife, and actually like, take time for us. But there's no way that I'm not going to be in a place that is built for, like, it is the height of physical experience design, and not be like taking notes the entire time.
Absolutely.
You just can't turn some things off. But I think another great example of experience design that is conscious of people coming from different perspectives. The recent game Breath of the Wild, Zelda, they like, I got so much inspiration from where they went with things, because they have grown up in an industry where they realize just people who are coming into a video game, they are coming from every walk of life. They might be speaking different languages. They have different habits. They have different perspectives, and um, and how do you make a fluid experience for all of those people? Like, how do you make an experience that will speak to somebody who is really really amazing at video games, and make it just as good for them as it is for somebody who's their first time? And what I found that they did in Breath of the Wild is like, they contextualized everything. Like, you get near something, and then it tells you, if you need to, oh, this is how you interact with this thing. And I felt like there's so much that we can borrow from a lot of the design, um, the design guidelines that they've kind of set up for themselves for VR, because we're going to have that even more so. It's like, when you get near an object, that object can now communicate with you. And how do we set up these little nudges of like, all right, it's something that if you're experienced, you won't even think about it. It's not like you're going to be looking for that cue or anything. You can just grab things and go. But if this is your first time, most of the time people are worried about like, am I going to mess up this technology? Like a lot of people don't want to even touch a controller. Like as soon as you put it in their hand, they're like, oh my God, what is this? Like there are buttons. And even me as an experienced gamer, somebody's like, oh, just hit the B button. I'm like, what the hell's the B? Like, you know, I'm still
Yeah.
checking. And I'm all of those things are kind of like flow killers. And ultimately we're trying to set up like a flow. We're trying to get you into a flow state where you're not thinking about, oh, I'm in a headset, I'm touching technology, I'm playing a video game, or it's like we just want you to get to the point where it's like I'm in this experience, I'm immersed, I don't want to break immersion, I want to actually get whatever's trying to be communicated. And that starts from the very beginning of priming, from just getting into that headset, just like Disney sending you those magic bands, all the way to what is going to break the immersion throughout the flow, and like how do we communicate with you in a way that is not obstructive.
100%. As soon as the tools need to disappear as quickly as possible,
Mhm.
or the real environment, so that way the digital environment comes the new real. Whether you're sitting in a movie theater and you need everybody else to go away and the sides of the screen to disappear and you're just in the story, or video editing software, when I first started, and I would accidentally hit the letter S and then something would pop up on the screen and I couldn't figure out how to get rid of it, right? And then
Awful feeling.
it terrible. And so you're like, okay, do I need to start over, turn whatever? And with games, like when I wanted to try cloud gaming, so I got Stadia, and getting used to that controller. And at first it was, and like you said, you're looking for the buttons, which pulls you out of the immersion, because you got to pay attention to whatever's going on. And as soon as you can get past that, so I love that you're looking for ways to accelerate that process, or at least make it fun. Like
Yeah.
even now, having spent years and years online, if I hover over something and it doesn't tell me what it's for, that irritates me. Like, just freaking put the text there. It's not that hard. Add it in.
Yeah. Yeah. And
What
it's a world of difference. Like just that little bit of
huge.
information is a world of difference for your experience, understanding.
And if you add those little burrs over time, then it takes away from whatever that product or service is in the mind of the consumer. And we're pretty fickle people when it comes to what we want. Like I'm going to uninstall you if you do one thing that's irritating enough. I was reading about advertising in the metaverse recently, and hearing about the injections of ads, a couple different use cases. Ones that were inappropriate for certain age people, and then others where the volume was hurt people's ears, and they would have to remove whatever they were using for the auditory input because it was painful. And so you just uninstall whatever that app is and it goes away forever.
Hmm.
So like paying attention to what, here's something that I like about the whole vibe that you're bringing, is thinking about what you're delivering to the audience rather than what you're trying to acquire for yourself. And that's a massive thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, ultimately it's about communication. So if you're really trying to communicate something that's important to you, I think you want to make sure that it's being received in the best way it could possibly be received. And part of that is better understanding what is the condition that somebody else is receiving the information. And if you're responsible for shaping that condition, then ultimately it's up to you to make the effort to shape that condition first before you try to attempt to communicate that, assuming that you're trying to communicate something that isn't harmful to the other person or just beneficial to you. But also I think it really does come back down to the selfish perspective. You have to understand at some point that that it's a positive sum game. It's not a zero sum game. Like the better off everyone and everything is around you, that's only going to improve your life, and vice versa. The worse your environment is, the worse your life is going to be. That's just how it is. And we're kind of coming out of this this state where our brains are just so primed for scarcity. Like we're so primed for just taking that it has been affecting the way that we are even stepping into this new technology, that we just don't realize, like, oh no, we got to give, we got to give, we got to give better. We've got to open our minds up to other perspectives. We really need to make our environment as diverse as we can comfortably make it, or even beyond comfortable to some extent.
What are some of the things that you feel we need to do to inject that diversity into XR?
Well, I think finding a way to get excited about learning somebody else's life and culture, like finding ways to get excited to learn, I think is the number one thing that we should be doing. I think that's more important than sending kids to school. More important than sending kids to school is getting them excited about being educated, because ultimately they'll do the rest themselves, and they'll do it far better than our schools are designed to do it. As I think anybody who's put a tablet in front of a kid has seen, like once they're excited and they're engaged, they'll take that thing wherever they need to go, or put a video game controller, or put them in front of a computer. I mean, research has consistently shown that the more you are engaged in something, the more you'll absorb. When it comes to either reading a book or taking in communication or information in any way, shape, or form. So I think what we need to do for the XR industry is get excited about the right things and find ways of getting people excited about the right things. Prime them to be interested in whatever way that we can. I feel like I derailed a little bit, but I think that's the general idea.
No, that nails it. So just knowing a lot of teachers, just for the audience, teachers are highly constrained, but they're working their asses off within with the tools that they have, and they often try to influence the system, but it's so convoluted, so bureaucratic, and the decisions become political that it calcifies the process. But they're working super hard, and during the pandemic, teaching both digitally as well as physically, it was almost like two jobs for them. And it's just getting the kids to do the work without the help of the parents. It's super challenging. So having a disruptive technology that maybe we could leverage within the school systems, as well as creating alternatives without hurting disadvantaged kids that need a building, a safe place, a place where they can get food to go to have that positive experience, so they can, because if you're worried about your safety, it doesn't matter how cool the tech is. So
absolutely.
I definitely see that purpose, but to have that disruptive technology that comes in that can fuel that fire from an extremely young age, that's going to be extremely powerful and change the world.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. It's getting, how do we work towards getting rid of those blockers? If you're concerned about what you're going to eat, for like that you haven't eaten yesterday and you may not eat today, like, yeah, education is a little low on the priority list. And unfortunately, we have way too many kids, teens and adults in that boat. And I think too long it has been this scarcity culture that we've been pushing, that we haven't even been able to like stop and look around and be like, hey, wait a second, like there's a better way of doing this. There's fundamentally a better way of doing this. And I think ultimately, to me, that means changing our mindset, changing the way that we are digesting information, and also like, yeah, what are we trying to move towards? Like, do we have a goal, or are we just saying like, we're going to let our love of money and comfort kind of lead us to wherever humanity goes? And I feel like the reason I'm excited about XR I'm excited about what I'm doing is that for my part, I feel like I can actually start moving in a direction where I can start to build the world that I thought we would be living in 2021. Because I realized like even with this hat, like I realized back in like 2018 that I was like, oh man, like it's 2018 and I'm still having these hesitations or these thoughts as if it was 1998. Like nothing has changed culturally. Like nothing's changed. Like we're still in the
What
same
kind of
mind.
examples? What are you thinking?
Uh, well, real quick, the story about me wearing this hat was I was in H&M with my wife, and she was making a purchase, and I was standing in the women's section, and I saw a hat like this. I think it's that nasty one over there, but I saw a hat just in the women's section, and I stood there for about 5 minutes staring at this thing because I was like, I think I really want that hat, but I have a hesitation because it's in the women's department. And then I got like angry. I got like so angry that that was even a consideration. I was like, this is 2018. Like this is I remember thinking 2000 was just like, that's it. After that, we're going to accelerate and the world's going to be this amazing, crazy place. And I just realized like, no, none of that happened. And it took me 18 years to realize that none of that happened. And that the problem wasn't even with everybody else. It was like the problem was in me. Like I was having the hesitation. I'm standing there and it doesn't even matter. Like it's literally it's an object in a bigger object, like and the only definitions that were stopping just existed in me.
Right.
And when I realized that, I was like, oh no, we gotta it's up to me to create the future that I want to be living in. And so then I was just like, I'm buying the hat. And then the next day I was like, no, I went back and I bought another one. And then, and then after that, I've just been wearing it. So when I put it on, I just realized like, all right, you are in the future that you want to be living in. Like you want to create. It's up to us. And if we have a problem with the way things are working, it's up to us to change how we think about it and how we communicate where we want to go.
Well, first of all, Bracey, it's a dope ass hat, period, regardless of gender. But if it's okay for me to stick up for you a little bit, the fact that you recognized and you may have gotten super angry, but it's obvious from your countenance here that you forgave yourself and you created the change within yourself by behaving in a different way. And the combination in my mind of recognition, forgiveness, which is often missing in the cultural argument. I mean, the fact that we're going back 10 years to destroy somebody today, I think is crazy, because without the forgiveness, then what the hell does the person want to change for? And the fact that you were able to do that for yourself, and then from that moment, the let's call it the light, the energy, the vibe, what you're putting out there into the culture, that magnifies, because then it starts touching person by person, which has a network effect and it's exponential. So I think for that you should be applauded.
Well, I really appreciate that. I don't feel like I've it doesn't feel that glamorous from this side of the story, but I think self-awareness is our it's important on our journey. Self-awareness is an individual, but then also all of us kind of helping us become a little bit more self-aware, a little less of the blame culture. It's really hard because there are people who are actively making other people's lives worse. And you're right. Like if you shout them down, they're not going to change. They'll only dig in even more. But it's a hard balance of like, how do we actually push things forward, being a human with the limitations of us being a human, and that's not going to change anytime soon. So we gotta, come to terms with who we actually are.
It was one of the cool things about what you're doing and how VR is enabling empathy, right? So if you have the experience of what is it like to be a Black person walking around a store? What is it like to be in solitary confinement? What is it like to be homeless? We can also do things like, what is it like to just simply be angry all the time and to put that in the world,
Yeah.
versus what is it like to feel still and calm and connected? And by building that, we can really change the world. And part of this is definitely by the voices and the colors and the genders that we're pulling into the conversation, and ensuring that as many people as possible have a voice at sitting at the table, that they get pulled up. Some people,
Mhm.
I was listening to a lecture one time, and the gentleman said, how can you pull yourself up by your bootstraps if you don't have any boots? And so looking at people and giving them an opportunity is going to be huge to bring that inclusion, because we're also going to talk about socioeconomic status, how somebody that grew up affluent in a happy home is going to be different than somebody who grew up poor in a happy home, which is
Yeah.
going to be different from somebody that was extremely wealthy in an abused environment versus a middle class environment. So
Yeah.
even from that level, pulling that in. So as we're pushing, so this is a new technology, right? You mentioned there's no linear path because it's also new, and we're trying to shape this thing. And one of the big aspects of that I'm hearing almost universally from everybody in the industry is, let's make it this beautiful inclusive space. And somebody told me recently, which I loved as well, is it's not going to happen unless we talk about it and then do it, which is why I pointed out that, hey, you created the change and then did it. Say we have that. What are we building? What experiences are we looking for outside of, like, say we solve some of the societal challenges? What do you like? What do you envision? Like, you're writing a book or you're creating the story of the future. What are we moving towards?
Well, I think whether we're attempting to build it or not, I feel like all entertainment, all communication, we're going to start to look for more. We've already gotten to this point where we can binge watch television shows, right? And then that evolved to, oh, we can use all of this data of what people are watching to even like hone in even more on like, oh, we could make the perfect TV show for this group and that group. And I feel like within a decade, I think you will be able to, if you wanted to, sit in front of a television set and not move and just be streamed things that would just perfectly speak to you in that moment and even evolve with you as you change, because as that information is going into you, it's going to change what you want in real time, and it'll be like, oh, they're adjusting, let me change it over, and you could just get that flow, right? I feel like ultimately what we're going to want is more. We're not just going to want to be entertained. There's an opportunity for whatever we're taking in, whatever we're digesting as in the form of entertainment. We will also just want information, better information. I want to be able to not just watch a TV show, but when I step away from that TV show after an hour, I want to understand how Bitcoin works. I want to understand how like I feel like what we did is we honed in how we want to be communicated to, and now the next level is let's actually use that to our benefit and the benefit of the world around us. So I feel like you may be interested in a fantasy show that was built off of Lord of the Rings, but maybe how interpersonal relationships work and people struggling with PTSD, and us understanding like, oh, if we're in this place, here are some steps to get to this place. I feel like ultimately the world that we want to create is a one that we have a better awareness of what's around us, and we have a desire to better understand ourself in all the multiple dimensions that we exist. Like there are so many dimensions of ourself that just goes in so many different ways, that ultimately we want to understand ourselves, we want to understand the world around us, and ultimately we want to do things that would improve the state of both of those, whether that's myself or my community or the world around me. I want to consciously and unconsciously make choices that that lead to a more fulfilled life. That's and that can take a lot of different forms. And I don't think we should prescribe necessarily like this is what we want that to be. But I think the result of moving in a direction like that, that's not so well defined, but a little bit more inclusive and understanding that it's like healthy systems look like X, like a healthy system looks like more animals, more trees, more diversity of life. I think ultimately diversity in all forms, from human diversity all the way down to to like just biomaterial diversity. The more diversity, the better. Yes, it needs to be organized in a way that helps everything, but we need to find a way to have a more diverse perspective, more diverse microbiome in our gut. Like more diversity ultimately is what I think we're leading towards, and just better understanding and awareness of self and how we fit in those new contexts.
I love that. That's beautiful. So now you just said that to a bunch of 13th graders. Love that, by the way. There's some people now that are inspired. And one of the coolest things in my mind about emerging technologies like XR and blockchain is both of those communities, they're all about come on in, we're all trying to figure it out. Come figure it out with us. No judgment. Just, work hard and add something as soon as you can. That's cool. So now you're in front of these 13th graders. Maybe let's resources, no resources. What would you start pointing them to start cracking their teeth on this thing to become a part of this really awesome community?
Yeah, I think no matter what age you are, I think it always starts with where are you at? Like recognize, come to terms with where are you? What do you have as far as your immediate tools? Or what do you have as far as community? Where are you? Find other people that are like-minded. I don't care who or where they are. Like they may not be your best friend. They may not be your brother or your family members. Like they might be some other kid who's just like, it's like I'm alone. I've been working on this really cool stupid robot, but I'm interested in doing something different. Like really trying to hone in on where you're at, what resources you have, and where you want to be. And then so after you assess and after you have an idea of where you want to go, and it doesn't mean like what you have to define your life like, oh, I want to be an engineer. Just like, what do you want to feel? Like, what is that feeling that you want? What is a feeling that Disney gives you? Or what is the feeling that your favorite video game gives you? Explore that feeling. Like, explore what generated it. Explore what are the ways that you can make yourself feel that. And do you want to share that feeling? If you do, you probably you exploring that feeling will probably have a better roadmap to that feeling than other people who even gave it to you. So so try to find whatever resources you can and try to get little wins, like whatever that little feeling is. Get a little win. If you wanted to, if you're inspired to go in a video game direction, try to get a little win by making the smallest game, even if it's just with paper. Like, it doesn't matter. Whatever you can construct to get that feeling, to get that outcome, then you get that feedback you iterate on that. You try it again. You try another way of approaching that feeling that you want people to get. And as that feeling evolves and your means evolve, you yourself will evolve and continue to grow. And ultimately, getting away from that feeling of like, I am nothing right now. What am I going to do? Forget that mindset, because that's a poor mindset that was given to us, and it only breaks us and breaks us down. But if you can find a way to be like, well, yeah, if I put a little effort towards that feeling over time, over the next year, over the next 2 years, which seems like a long time when you're 13, but like, I think everybody who's past the teenage phase, or they're into their 20s or in the 30s and 40s, you realize like, oh man, that's nothing. Like that year went by, but the habits that I grew consciously or unconsciously, I realized like, oh man, like it was no time at all. And if I had just put a little bit more effort, even just a little, the returns on that investment would have been amazing. And that's ultimately what I want to get people into that mindset of, is like, what is the return on your investment that you're looking? Stop looking for this, get out of this like lottery mindset. Like, oh, I want to do this one thing right now and then like reap the benefits tomorrow. It's like, let's get away from that. Like, let's get away from that immediately and try to, like, what is the little win that you can get today that can lead to a bigger win tomorrow and the next day and the next day, and just ramp up slowly but surely. And some people, it will be overnight success. Others, it'll take a little longer, but for everyone, they will fundamentally be in a better place than they were when they started.
That's a super healthy perspective, and it helps you fall in love with life, because
Yeah.
you're not, because it matters what you're working on moment by moment, and you're looking for those micro wins that keep you going. When it gets hard, you stick with it, and because you see the growth, and it changes how you feel inside, where you don't need the quick win. I mean, they're nice when they happen, but the overall process and the journey becomes the win in and of itself. And then
Yeah.
that the money and the fame or the popularity or whatever that external thing you're trying to seek, it kind of happens as you grow within that thing, that passion that you're trying to cultivate. That's really cool, man.
Thanks.
So what are the social platforms that you're available on? How do people find you and connect with you?
Great question. I've been pulling it out of the the social platforms for a little bit, but you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I apologize, I'm not overly active, but you can communicate with me in those places. LinkedIn. When you search for Bracey Smith, I'm pretty easy to find. There's not too many Bracey Smiths out there. But yeah.
All right, and we'll drop that in the show notes. So, Bracey, this was a cool conversation. You have an extremely healthy perspective that I absorbed. So, thank you for that. Loved your
Thanks.
insight into the importance of experience, and what are some of the friction points and some of the ways to win. I think that was really valuable. So, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Robert, for having me. This is fantastic.